All right, Vince.
Is it time?
Are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's go.
Let's do
Let's
it, baby.
go.
Let's do it. So we got Michael Mayer stuff to talk about.
Yeah, we do.
And Michael Mayer, he is done. He is gone. He has opted out for the NFL. So how will you remember Michael Mayer's career at Notre Dame?
I know this probably isn't all that creative, but I'll remember him as the best tight end in Notre Dame history at a place that produces really good tight ends. And that's not a sexy answer to that question, but the dude was just reliable, and he is a good teammate. He was a good leader. He was everything that you would want in an elite football player on your team. I will say that because I think he was a very, very, very good leader on that team. And I know Brian has told this story numerous times, but there's a freshman that was on the team this year. Michael Mayer just showed up at his dorm room and said, "You're working out with me today." It wasn't even somebody that was in his position group. You know what I mean? It was just like, "Hey, it's your day. Let's go." And they worked out together. People don't understand how uncommon that is, right? And it's even more uncommon when it's one of your best players on the team that is that good of a leader. So he is just a great mix of leadership and ability and talent and all of that. And he's obviously going to be missed. And I remember after his freshman year thinking to myself, better enjoy these next 2 years because there's no chance he's coming back for a fourth year. And here we are. And I will say that I did sit back and I enjoyed all 3 years of Michael Mayer, and I'm going to really enjoy watching him at the next level.
I mean, he's been fun to watch from day one, and I still remember it's like his 3 years have just gone by in a flash. And like a couple of years ago, it was after his freshman season. I asked him if he surprised himself with what he was able to do. And he said, no, with a complete straight face.
Nope.
He said, I did what I expected to do. Now I've got more work to do, and I'm going to get better. And 2 years later, he's the best tight end to wear a Notre Dame uniform. And I think you said that's saying something, considering the tight ends who have come through this university, whether it's Tyler Eifert to go back to Bavaro or Cross and, all these different guys. You've had some tight ends come through Notre Dame, and he is the standard bearer. Catches, touchdowns, and yardage. I mean, and for whatever reason, maybe he was so focused on being a receiver this year, but I don't know if you saw the little highlight, and I realize you can make anyone look good in a series of highlights, but still, he was a very consistent blocker last year, and that was something that he kind of had to work on again this year.
Agreed.
But one of the first memories, highlights that come to mind for me of Michael Mayer when I think about him is the awesome run that Kyron Williams had against North Carolina last year. That was an awesome run in itself. Who was the guy, the lead blocker on the sideline saying, "Let's go, big guy. We're getting down the sideline. You're getting to the end zone." It was Michael Mayer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just everything that you talked about, the work effort or the work ethic that Michael Mayer has. He was the guy who was staying after practice working with Drew Pyne. Again, now maybe you didn't need so much one-on-one, work with Drew Pyne. Maybe you need to be bringing some wide receivers in as well. But obviously, it starts with him and that old coach's saying, when your best players are your hardest workers, you can go a long way.
Absolutely.
And he is right at the top.
There is zero chance of this, Jason, and it's not against you personally, but he says, I think Tommy Rees and Coach Marcus Freeman asked Michael Mayer to move on to make room for the younger guys.
No.
I hope that's a joke. Maybe it is, because he just put out smiley
you're
happy
not,
faces.
You're not going to tell Michael Mayer to take a walk for one game. No.
Not a chance. Not a chance. And if Michael Mayer, now he could have said, now, if I'm Marcus Freeman and Michael Mayer said, "Hey, coach, I think I'm about coming back next year," I'm like, dude, you're going to be a first-round draft pick. You need to go. I would say that. But I'm not saying it because I need to get younger guys playing time.
Right.
Because you're pushing the best player on your team out the door. And that's not why you do it. You do it because it's the best thing for him, right? But it would be hard for me to tell him not to come back if he said, "Coach, I'm coming back for my fourth year."
Yeah.
That would be really hard.
Fill in the blank, Vince. Notre Dame's biggest surprise player this season was blank.
This may ruffle some feathers, and frankly, I hope it does. I'm going with Drew Pyne. I think that he was a big surprise. I think he was a big surprise in many different ways. Number one, that he started 10 games for the University of Notre Dame, which if you told me that when he walked in the door, I would have said no chance. I think that at times he played way ahead of his skis and did a great job. And so I'm going to give this to Drew Pyne. And there's other guys, obviously, that we could choose, but he was a good surprise for me. So, okay, Jason was joking. I appreciate that, Jason. Thank you. It's hard to tell when I'm reading it on the text. Okay. So I apologize. You the man. I appreciate that, Jason. But, no, that's the first one that came to my mind. So I'm sticking with it. He was the biggest surprise for me.
You know, it's funny because I thought you would go with Benjamin Morrison. Pyne was going to be my answer as well. You know, I think it's absolutely right because, again, we saw Drew Pyne in fall camp, and the Drew Pyne that we saw in fall camp was not, you know, like the Drew Pyne that we saw in the first half of Cal and that we saw in the mop-up, you know, not mop-up, but at the end of the Marshall game when Notre Dame was trying to come back. It's like, that's like nightmare worst case, but you know, I didn't think it would be quite that bad, but it's like that was your biggest concern when you saw Drew Pyne. Then he finally calmed down, you know, whether getting yelled at and, you know, do your effing job was the key to the whole thing or not. He settled down and he rode that streak for a couple of games and he was really good. But, you know, there was still a lot of room for improvement, but this guy ultimately backup quarterback, 3-star guy, led Notre Dame to an 8-2 record. And to me, it's really surprising that he was able to do that. I wouldn't have thought that they would be able to get through the season with that kind of record with Drew Pyne. Now, Benjamin Morrison, now, again, like when he showed up on campus during summer workouts, you started to hear a little bit of things, but it's still one thing to be a workout warrior in the summer as a true freshman, and it's another thing to step on the field and actually do it on Saturdays.
Sure.
And just like any cornerback, especially a young one, you know, he had his ups and downs. Did he give up some scores? Sure he did. But, you know, Trevon Diggs, you know, my guy with the Dallas Cowboys, led the NFL in interceptions last year. He gave up some touchdowns, but what does Benjamin Morris have that the great cornerbacks have? He has a short memory. You know, he puts it behind him and he keeps going. You know, so I think you can make a case for him as a surprise as well. Again, the talent there, but just the fact, you know, and especially like we were hearing more about 21. I'm drawing a blank now on his name. Mickey, thank you. Jaden Mickey.
Yep.
You know, like especially after the spring that like Mickey was going to be the guy, and then here comes Benjamin Morrison after not even having a spring, and you know, to do what he did at the end of the season with all the interceptions. So just great, you know, to see a freshman like that. So I think you can make a case for either of them, but I agree. I'd put Pyne at the top of my list as well. All right, I got a star. Did you star that? Yeah, you did. Super chat before it gets away. Once the college football playoff rankings start coming out during the season, Vince, we get the weekly TV show to make the reveal that comes with it. Do you buy or sell that the college football playoff weekly reveal show needs to go away?
It needs to go away. I have no problem with them having a show for the first one and the last one, but all the ones in between, you can just do it on SportsCenter. You have a segment or whatever when you do the reveal, that's fine. But the entire show, number one, they don't have it at the same time every week. That's super annoying.
Especially once basketball starts.
Yes, because they try to do it in between games, or they try to do it at halftime of one of the games, and if a game goes into overtime, no, if you're going to have one, then you need to have it at the same time every Tuesday, like clockwork, and they're never going to do that. So my solution is you do it on SportsCenter, you have a segment. I have no problem if the talking heads want to throw around their opinions for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, right? But you don't need a half an hour to an hour-long show to reveal a top 25 that's not that different. First show, first reveal, last reveal, not in the between.
Well, and you're putting, you know, this year, obviously, the chairman was Boo Corrigan from North Carolina State. Chairman's different all the time. But you put that guy in a situation where from week to week, he basically, you know, if you went and looked every week and you transcribed everything that was saying, he's contradicting himself from week to week, and you're putting him in the position where he has to contradict himself and the committee and the way they have to explain different things. I don't think you need an explanation from the top every day. I completely agree with what you're saying. You do it the first time. Here we are, late October, first rankings come out and explain it, and then do it the last time, just this past week, like we had, do it on, the Sunday when the announcements are made. You explain what things came down to. I don't think you should have to explain week to week. And just like you said, because of the varying times and everything else, what are you really serving? Who are you really serving?
Right.
By doing that? The rest of the rank, like for the rest of eternity, these rankings have come out, and no one's had to explain the AP and the coaches poll on a week to week basis.
And it comes out like clockwork on Sundays. I mean, that's what needs to happen. I'm sorry. And to be honest with you, waiting until Tuesday is a little ridiculous as well. But
yeah. And then there's that. But it's probably because of Monday Night Football. It's basically a TV program. Is what it is.
You're right.
Because it's good enough ratings that they'll probably never do away with it. But in terms of its actual usefulness, I don't think you need it at all.
Right.
You guys have ESPN. Yes, because I still pay for cable. So
rich kids.
Yes. And I also, watch games all the time.
Right. See, that's the other thing. A lot of games are on the ESPN family of networks. And so if you are in a profession like Sean and myself, or if you are just a sports fan, you don't have to agree with the stuff that they say, but they do have a lot of games. So you got to kind of pay attention.
Right. Fill in the blank. As people who cover Notre Dame, we hear time and again about the importance of being in a conference and the conference championship games. But guess what? This year, a team lost in the conference championship game, and another team didn't even play in a conference championship game, and they're both in the Final Four. And that means blank, Vince.
It means that the top 12 that is going to come out in a couple of years would look a heck of a lot different than it does right now, because the caveat of having to be a conference champion and be in the top 4, you're going to get some people elevated to being in the top 4 that have no business being in the top 4.
See, and that's like the conferences want those championship games to still mean something. And that's exactly right. Like Kansas State would not be in the top 4, but neither would TCU, because they didn't win the conference championship game. That's a great point.
That would be because if you have to
They'd
be a
both be in the
champion,
playoff, but neither one of them would be in the top 4.
Well, but if you have to be a conference champion, you only have 5 choices about who could be in the top 4, right?
Right.
So I think
no, you have 5 plus the group of 5, because I think the group of 5 can still qualify as a conference champion if they're ranked high enough.
Okay. So
yeah,
it would be very interesting to see who the top 4 would be, though, right? Because you got Kansas State 1, Utah 1.
Let me pull up the rankings here real quick, and I'll help you out.
Are those 2 in the top 4?
Hang on.
You know what I mean?
Hang on a second.
All right. What do you got?
Like I said, I'll pull up the rankings here. So Georgia and Michigan, that's your 1 and 2.
Obviously.
And then after that, you would go down to Utah as the 8th ranked team.
They're now
because
number 3.
They won a conference championship. And Kansas State actually would be. Clemson. I'm sorry.
Oh, Clemson. Yeah.
Because Clemson beat North Carolina. So you would have Clemson at number 3 and then Utah at number 4 for seeding purposes, because it is the top 4 conference champions who get those top 4 seeds.
And then you fill out the rest. But I mean, it changes the whole dynamic of the playoff, because of that. You have to be a conference champion thing to be in the top 4. Completely changes it. Clemson gets their way in just like that. Just like that, they're in, even though they had one really bad loss and then a loss to Notre Dame.
Yeah, I guess, and you bring up good point, because after next year it's going to 12 teams. So they're going to mean something completely
But they don't
different.
Mean squat right now.
Right now it means absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And I was, I was kind of gearing it more toward like the whole, Notre Dame, you've got to be in a conference and all this. Now, obviously there will be an argument at that point about, once it goes on for a few years, if Notre Dame is making the playoff regularly, but not able to get, that first round bye, that might be something that makes them weigh what they want to do for the future. But yeah, you bring up an excellent point, because the conference commissioners, or the schools, the conferences that they belong to, these are still money makers, these conference championship games, and they want there to be some importance on those games going forward. So the conference championship games are actually going to mean a heck of a lot more in 2 years once the 12-team format begins than what they mean right now, because right now they mean absolutely nothing.
Right.
That's, again, my point was, you got 2 teams in there that didn't win, conference championships, but you're absolutely right. In a couple of years, they're going to mean a lot. Going to mean a heck of a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Baseball, Vince. Hot stove. Cubs.
I didn't know this until I read your rapid fire this afternoon, and it hurts me. Go ahead.
Okay, so you confused me for a minute, but so the Cubs signed Cody Bellinger, and they also got a starting pitcher, Jameson Talent, yesterday. The Mets got Justin Verlander. Wilson Contreras
there it is.
signed away from the Cubs. That's what kills you, isn't it? He's going to be a Cardinal, and the Yankees paid big to keep Aaron Judge in pinstripes. So who's had the best hot stove week among those teams? I can tell you. I mean, how does let's start with this, Mr. Cubs fan, since you're bemoaning it already. Does getting Bellinger and Talon, does it offset losing Wilson Contreras to the Cardinals?
No, it doesn't. Because, and look, and when I saw it, I texted you when I saw it. I was like, hey, the Cubs got Cody Bellinger. And then it made it so obvious that I don't watch Dodger games, because I had no idea that Cody Bellinger has stunk the last couple of years. Because I started looking at his numbers, and I started reading about him and understanding why the Dodgers let him go. Of course, the Cubs are going to pick him up, because that's just how that works.
That's what they do. For $17.4 million, and it's only a one-year deal.
One-year deal,
which I don't really understand.
Well, I think the way I read some of the things, that he was looking for a one-year deal because he wants kind of a reclamation project, like he wants
to prove himself because of the fact that he has been down. I guess that makes sense.
And then he wants to go out and be a free agent again. Okay,
yeah,
I get that. That's fine. And so I'm okay with the Cubs taking a flyer on Cody Bellinger, because we've seen what he can do. Let's hope he can, find that flame again, I guess. But no, the Wilson Contreras news just shot me right in the heart. Number one, that he left, and then number two, that he goes to the Cardinals, of all places. The Cardinals, like, that hurts. I'm gonna have to watch now for the next 5 years him hurt the Cubs in more ways than one. Like, the Cardinals just got rid of a catcher that I hated. Great player, but he played for the Cardinals. Okay, so I hated him, and now I have to hate Wilson Contreras. Like, come on, man, that's mean. But I will say that it's amazing that Justin Verlander is still the pitcher that he is at how old he is. To be honest with you, I think that's a good pickup for the Mets. But if I'm being honest, I think the Yankees are doing the best of the ones that you gave me, because I think Aaron Judge is pretty darn good.
Didn't win a World Series with him. Didn't even get to the World Series with him. Fair. He's great. He's had one great year. I was actually looking forward to being able to cheer for Aaron Judge if he was going to go to San Francisco, but now he's going to stay in New York. I don't blame him for taking the paycheck and all that, but I just, when I look, I think the Cubs made out pretty well. No, you're absolutely right. Bellinger has some work to do, and that whole thing, he's got to prove himself. But I think it's interesting, like, as watching them trade away all the stars a couple of years ago, either trade away or watch them walk, that they're reinvesting now, and they're willing to sink some money in it and see what they can go do, even though they weren't able to keep Wilson Contreras around. But got a lot of young guys coming up too.
I would have loved for them to re-sign Rizzo, and he re-signed with the Yankees, which stinks. And now Wilson Contreras is gone. So pretty much any tie to the World Series team is officially gone at this point, except for David Ross, and he was a player. Now he's the coach. So, it's time to rebuild. Not that it wasn't time for that before, but
couple of different things. Adam Brenneman show for the Deshaun Kaiser interview.
I'm going to look that up.
If I can find that.
That sounds interesting.
Yep. And then we have another super chat. A lot of Oklahoma fans seem pretty confident Peyton Bowen will flip. How likely do you think it is that he will stay?
It was the same confidence level that Oklahoma fans had that Lincoln Riley was going to be their head coach before he got on a plane and went to USC. So I feel pretty good about the fact that Notre Dame will retain Peyton Bowen. I listen to Ryan and Brian on a regular basis, and they're not worried, so I'm not worried. So
yeah,
that is,
and that's where I tend to go as well. I've got to listen to our recruiting guys, the guys who are in there, with the contacts and the details and all that kind of good stuff. So, speaking of one last recruiting question, is the 23 class a true gap closer?
I mean, to be honest with you, if they're the second ranked class in the country, I think that qualifies. I mean, in talent and in size, they are. Absolutely. And you're right, everybody. I forgot about Kyle Hendricks. My bad. Sorry. You're absolutely right. But he's kind of a shell of his former self at this point. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. But no, I think that this is a very, very, very good class, and they're still adding pieces to it. So yes, this is a gap closing class. No question about it.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think it's not just this class. It's you have to stack these classes together. You can't just go out and have, we've got the number 2 rated class now. You've got to stack classes on top of each other.
And, absolutely.
And that's, by having Minchie already next year, that's a great early first step. And obviously CJ Carr the year after that, they've already started with good building blocks. And that's what it's going to come to. It can't just be one class. You've got to, continue to do it. But everything we've seen from Marcus Freeman and this group says they're on that path. And that's
absolutely.
So what we've said all along was if they're truly going to be competitors for national championships, that's what it's going to be. And this is a great first step. Great first step.
No, absolutely. And I'm looking it up. Recruiting rankings. I need to see where Notre Dame landed in the 22s, but I want to say they were a top 10. And of course, my internet they were 7. So they were 7 last year. And I believe they're sitting at number 2 this year. So number 3, according to 247, but I've seen number 2 with some other with some other services, right? So at least a top 3 class, we'll call it that. And the 24 class is already shaping up to be pretty stinking good as well. They're the number 2 class right now in the 24 class. And I realize it's very early, but they're stacking those classes, like you said. And that's the important part when it comes to recruiting. So I'm very excited about where this staff is going from a recruiting standpoint.
Absolutely. All right. Appreciate everybody being here tonight. Hit that like button again, if you would, before you leave this evening. We do appreciate it. It does help out Irish Breakdown greatly. Jesse and I will be in tomorrow, and we will have much more for you. And we'll have that special rapid fire on Friday as well.
Yes, sir.
4:30. Should we plan on 4:30 on Fridays?
I think 4:30
Fridays
is safe.
For the rapid fire.
I think 4:30 is safe. Yeah.
We'll see if we get any news to break this week like we had last week.
You never know. Probably not like the news we had last week, I wouldn't think, but at least I hope not.
I was going to say, let's hope not anyway. All right. Thanks again. Great mailbag. A lot of great questions out there tonight. And we will talk to you tomorrow. IB Nation Sports Talk.